Have a seat, everybody. Good afternoon. Before we begin today's meeting of my Economic Advisory Board, I wanted to say a few words about one of the topics that we'll be discussing and something that's one of our most important economic issues of our time, the skills and education of our workforce. Because every business leader in this room knows that the single most important predictor of America's success in the 21st century is how well our workers can compete with workers all around the world. All of our education institutions, from our preschools to our universities, have a critical role to play here. But one of our most undervalued assets as a nation is our network of community colleges. These colleges don't just serve as a gateway to good jobs for millions of middle-class Americans. Community colleges also serve as a pool of talent from which businesses can draw trained, skilled workers. Unfortunately, because of the burden the recession has placed on state and local budgets, community colleges have been forced to cap enrollments and scrap courses. And even in the best of times, they receive far less funding than four-year colleges and universities. Not only is that not right, I think it's not smart. Not at a time when so many Americans are still looking for work, and not at a time when so many other nations are trying to out-educate us today so they can out-compete us tomorrow. We need to be doing more, not less, to equip our workers with the skills and training they need in the 21st century. It's an economic imperative. And so I've said that by the year 2020, I want to see an additional 5 million community college degrees and certificates in America. And to reach this goal, we're making an unprecedented investment in our community colleges, upgrading them, modernizing them, and challenging these schools to pursue innovative, research-oriented approaches to education. And I've asked Dr. Jill Biden, a community college educator for more than 17 years who's with us here today, to help promote community colleges around the country and lead the first ever White House Summit on community colleges, which will be taking place tomorrow. And I've asked this Economic Advisory Board to reach out to employers across the country and come up with new ways for businesses, community colleges, and other job training providers to work together. The results of their effort is an initiative called Skills for America's Future, which we'll be talking about today. And I want to thank Penny Pritzker and I believe Anna Berger and perhaps some other folks around this table for putting in enormous amounts of time on this initiative. The idea here is simple. We want to make it easier to connect students looking for jobs with businesses looking to hire. We want to help community colleges and employers create programs that match curricula in the classroom with the needs of the boardrooms. We've already seen cases where this can work. Cisco, for example, has been working directly with community colleges to prepare students and workers for jobs ranging from work in broadband to health IT. And all over the country, we know that the most successful community colleges are those that partner with the private sector. So Skills for America's Future would help build on these success stories by connecting more employers, schools, and other job training providers and helping them share knowledge about what practices work best. The goal is to ensure that every state in the country has at least one strong partnership between a growing industry and a community college. And already companies from UTC to Accenture to the Gap have announced their support for this initiative, as well as business leaders like my friend Penny Pritzker and Aspen Institute's Walter Isaacson. I hope other business leaders will follow suit, and I'm also setting up a task force to work directly with the business community on this effort. This is one of those ideas that just makes sense. Investing in the skills and education of our workers and connecting them with potential employers is something that we should all be able to agree upon, whether we're Republicans or Democrats, business leaders or labor leaders. But it can only happen if we maintain our commitment to education. And so let me just make one last point before we start a broader discussion. I realize that we're facing an untenable fiscal situation. There was a $1.3 trillion deficit staring at me when I took office. And although the economic crisis and the steps we took to stop the free fall temporarily added to our fiscal challenges, it's clear that we're going to have to get serious about the deficit. And that's why I've proposed a 3-year freeze on non-security discretionary spending, That's why I've launched a bipartisan deficit reduction commission, which will be reporting in a few months. What I won't do is cut back on investments like education that are directly related to our long-term economic performance. Now is not the time to sacrifice our competitive edge in the global economy. And that's why I disagree so strongly with the proposal from some on the other side of the aisle to cut education by 20% in next year's budget. It's a cut that would eliminate 200,000 children from Head Start programs, would reduce financial aid for 8 million college students. It would leave community colleges without the resources they need to meet the goals that we've talked about today. And that just doesn't make sense to me. So I'm happy to have a debate about this issue in the coming months, but one thing I know is that this country will be stronger if all of our children get a world-class education. That means, by the way, not just money. It also means reform, and I'm glad to see Arne Duncan sitting here today, who's done as much to promote significant reform across the board than just about any education secretary in recent memory. Our businesses will be more successful if they can find skilled, trained workers here in America. Our future will be more secure if anybody who's willing to work hard is able to achieve their dream of getting a college education. And those are priorities that we all share. Those are investments that benefit the entire nation. And that's what we need to focus on right now. What will grow our economy, fuel our businesses, rebuild our middle class, and keep the American dream alive for the 21st century. So I look forward to working with all of you toward that common goal. And now, let's get down to the business of this meeting. I think they're going to remove this big thing here. And I'm going to be able to sit down and we'll have a good conversation. So, all right, somebody going to break this down? And I'll use this time to come around and say hello to everybody.